Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Workplace Wonders. I'm Blake Cohen.
And I'm Kara Kirby.
Hi, Kara.
Hi, Blake.
I am going to admit to you and to our audience member or members, hopefully more than one, that I have a backstock of podcast episodes to throw up. So eventually, we're going to start releasing them once a week again. But for now, just be patient with us.
Yeah, you're getting a PhD. You know what I mean?
Life be lifing.
Life be lifing.
Life be lifing. So we just got to sometimes go with the flow.
That's right. Don't be too hard on yourself.
Oh, I'm not.
No, not you. I meant that to our listener.
our listener. Yeah. There, listener. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you have about a backstock of like 10 episodes of a podcast you've been recording,
exactly.
Just let them come whenever they come.
Yeah. Hey, we're here for a good time, not for a long time, you know?
Totally. Yeah. Any other cliches that we can say before we get started?
I don't know. I just think carpe diem, really?
Seize the day.
Yeah.
It's Latin. I just interpreted that.
Oh, wow.
In real time. Yep. I didn't have to look that up at all. I basically speak Latin. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't.
All right. We're good.
Anyway, do we want to discuss the fall of the Roman Empire today or?
No, or crypto? What's going on? Okay,
Crypto.
We're done. All right, y'all.
I'm out of crypto. Okay, yes. Please introduce our guest. And thank you, Annie, for patiently waiting and listening to us babble.
Y'all, I am so excited. I have my friend Annie. It's now your friend too, Blake, our friend Annie that is here with us today. So Annie lives in the Raleigh-Durham area and she is an amazing facilitator. She just joined the board of our OD community here and I've had a great time getting to know her. So I think within the first 5 seconds of me being around her, not to put pressure on you, Annie, but I was like, do you want to come on our podcast and talk about all the things? And she was like, yeah, I do. So Annie, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, thanks for having me, Kara and Blake. So glad to be here. Hope we also don't get too far into the Roman Empire. I will not be able to fill up the full hour with such topics. But yeah, so my name is Annie Grace. Also, not all my first name. I changed my last name recently to Grace, which is an exciting thing, but a lot of people kind of confuse it with being my first name. And yes, by trade, I'm a facilitator. I run 2 different businesses. The first business is The Team Together. We're a boutique facilitation consulting firm where we run really custom workshops. We also do leadership development. And then the second business is called Women Facilitating, and we're a membership group for women who facilitate. And we do virtual events. We have 60 members from around the world, and we just launched in May. So we're really excited to get that up and growing. And yeah, also involved in a number of other local things around the region. Like Kara mentioned, I'm also in something called Facilitation Lab, which we run monthly sessions for facilitators. So really just all things facilitation is where you can find me.
Wow, that's a lot and amazing. Doing some great work.
Yes, totally. I'm busy right now, but about to be a lot less busy because I'm actually pregnant and my first baby in the spring. So I'm enjoying my busy season now and also just kind of having that meta experience of enjoying it because I know it's about to be over for a little while. So
I wonder if it's going to feel less busy or just the busy is going to look and feel different.
It's going to look and feel very different. It will be less Zooming, more trying to sleep.
Yes, less screen time.
Yes.
More scream time.
Yes.
I remember when I had
that was a good one. Come on.
I was trying to do Zoom and Z's, but I think
that was good.
Yeah, scream time is good. That's a good pun.
Yeah.
I remember having my first baby and I've been working since I was 12 years old. I've always been such a workhorse that I was I'm about to have 3 months of nothing to do. What am I going to possibly do with myself? And yeah, that was the naivete of a firstborn.
Yeah, luckily I am a little bit older and I've seen my friends go through it. I know that my time is not nothingness. But yeah,
it's the hardest. It's the hardest. I mean, it's the most rewarding, but it literally is the hardest work that you can do.
Yep. So I'll add that to my resume.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Honestly, it should be. I feel like that levels people up to another.
Oh, I've written a LinkedIn article on this, is that maternity leave or parental leave should be considered leadership development.
Yeah. I mean, really, is there, I keep recently making these connections between parenting, just from my old career of looking, I worked a lot with families that were helping loved ones navigate the process of overcoming addiction. And a lot of it was structured around parenting because I worked with a lot of families who had teens that were struggling. And I'm just the more I dive into this and have these conversations and work with leaders, the more I'm recognizing these parallels between, um, especially during challenging times, between
Oh
parenting and
yeah.
leadership.
Yeah, there's like so much self-regulation that has to come in. And
Mhm.
also I think it's important to like distinguish the two because obviously we can see like that paternalism showing up in the workplace. And so in becoming a parent, trying to like understand this like the zone of genius you have to have as being a parent and then when you come to work. I think it always comes back to me of just like how do you learn how to self-regulate? How do you like when someone else is upset, how do you not get upset?
Yeah,
That is, you are ahead of the curve, my friend.
Very
Like
yeah,
hard.
that is totally what it's and you know, it's like the reason why I always say it's leadership development is because you can talk about these things, right? You can take a class, you can do a book, but there isn't as often that you're practicing day in and day out.
right.
And like a child is simulation of leadership training at all times.
Wow. Yeah,
24 hours.
24 hours. Yeah.
it makes a ton of sense, honestly. Okay, I have questions for you. Um, One, I want to just start with your, and for those who are listening, is that a virtual background that you have, or is that
This
real?
is all real, real post-its, real wall, real door. And funny enough, I had this like beautiful bookcase with a color-coded books, all the beauty. And I realized that I wasn't able to look at my own window. The window was in my background. And so once I made that realization, I was like, well, I want my clients to experience something nice, but I'm the one that has to sit in my office all day. So I turned my desk around and then I ended up just having some sticky notes on the wall. And everyone was like, that matches exactly what you do. So I just put up more and it became like the most effective, the most economical background ever. So
I
there you
love it. Yeah, and so for those who are just listening and not watching, there's just a bunch of different colored, really well scattered and spaced post-it notes behind Annie right now. And what is on them? So that I
go.
can't see.
So I'll be very upfront with everybody here, just being transparent. Some of them are blank. So most of them, I don't do a lot of post-its in my actual office. I use Mural mostly when I'm working with clients, and clients don't actually come into my office. I go to them. So some of it was some internal workings when I'm with my business partner, and then the rest of it was just like trying to make the Zoom background look real
Cool.
good, you know?
Okay. Mission accomplished on both senses.
There we go. And it like intrigues people. They're like, what does it say? You know, it's like the mystery.
Yeah, it worked. Um, So today's topic that we said we were going to discuss beforehand, and as anybody who listens to this knows, that we'll typically get off topic, but usually to Kara's and I's ADHD is where it leads us off topic. Um, but the topic we discussed was the art and science of facilitation, and you mentioned obviously much of your job is centered around facilitation. I'm going to take us off topic for 1 second and then bring us back. Is that I've been obsessing with the with ontology recently, which is sort of the study of reality and how we make meaning of our worlds. So I'm going down these little rabbit holes with people. So I'm curious uh, what facilitation means to you. What does it mean to be a facilitator, and what facilitation means to you?
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, I have 90 different answers for it, which also makes it, very confusing. No, but I think facilitation is really trying to create the most participatory experience that you can, where it's part teaching, it's part presenting, and it's part collective problem solving. And so it requires kind of a whole host of different skills as a facilitator. You have to be able to design, which is really the bulk of the work that facilitators do, which is thinking through how is a group going to spend its time together and achieve its goals? And then, of course, you also have delivery, which people always kind of focus on when thinking about facilitation is the time that people are in the room, in the Zoom room. And that's really, to me, only a piece of it, but there's a lot of skill that goes into that. And then, of course, it's everything that happens after. So I see facilitation as this arc that occurs. So it could be a learning experience you have, could be a collective problem solving, or it could also just be like a group trying to get together for connection, right? And so there's kind of all different objectives that get people together. And right now, that's really how facilitation is showing up in my life.
Wow.
Such a good answer.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been able to describe it in such a succinct way before.
Yeah, I was a little taken back by that. That's it. You're so spot on, and I love that you described the arc, or like almost the three-part series of what facilitation is. And you're right. I don't think I ever thought about that, but people do mainly focus on what happens in the room. But there's the before, the preparation that is almost probably more important than what happens in the room. And then, like, maybe most important is what are the action items that are being taken, or how are you operationalizing what was done in the facilitation afterwards? Or how are the participants operationalizing it?
Yep. And how
Yeah.
did you kind of like leave them off in the session for that to be so, which I think is like, we always try, it's like landing the plane. How you end the session is like such a critical moment. Um, and also, we also talk a lot about, we just had a session on this actually with Session Lab, who we're partnering with. Great platform if you're a facilitator out there and want to not have to do your workshop math. Session Lab is a great platform for that. And they're not paying me to say this. Really love their product. But we just did a session on kind of even the beginning of like the first conversations you have either with a client or if you're working internally, like and how that's also facilitation, bringing people into that
Oh, that's
conversation
so smart.
of trying to figure out like what are you even trying to get done? What are your objectives and how you can facilitate that experience. And so again, it's like we really try to think of this massive time frame that encompasses when facilitation happens.
Yeah, because that I think when I'm looking at up and coming facilitators or people who are starting to, and I want to hear this story from you too, Annie, like how you got into it, because I always think that that's interesting too. But it's like it's that process of almost being able to sell it in or describe it to a client. Like you have some people that have gone through really amazing facilitation experiences before and they get it, right? It takes zero time to explain it to them. But for other people that haven't been through those experiences, it's really hard to help them understand what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think that's because we unfortunately have a lot of bad work experiences. So people can't imagine that meetings could be super productive, or you could walk
Mhm.
away feeling closer to your colleagues, or you could like voice what's not going right and it could, go over well and really change things. And so I think it's just one of those things you have to experience. And that's why it's so important for me, like when I'm working with my clients, of like getting them to experience it from the first call.
Mhm.
Right? Like we're doing this together, we're co-creating this together, and that like this is a two-way street. And like I am good at process and I'm good at making it participatory, but you're really good at what you do, and
Yeah.
I'm not, right? And so we need both of us to come together to make something better than we could do alone.
Okay. I love that. So many things, and I want to keep this going, but we need to go back a little bit. How did you discover this world? Will you tell me a story, like tell me the story about Annie and discovering facilitation and building this craft that you've built such a mastery around?
Yeah, so I started off in the nonprofit world. I was like a very pretty self-righteous activist for most of my youth. I did a lot of international development. I did a lot of work domestically. I was working in after-school programs and working on all sorts of humanitarian efforts. And I essentially started seeing a lot of trends of nonprofit leaders just kind of martyring themselves.
Mm,
And so I got really interested in kind of like how does the nonprofit world build its own capacity? And because I was trying to look at the systemic reasons for why that was happening. Because I was like, oh gosh, if I'm gonna have my whole career in this sector, I don't want to do that thing of like not making much money and not sleeping very much and always feeling like I have to give more and more and more. And yeah, so I got really into like, okay, well, how can nonprofits better sustain themselves? And I got into the whole idea of like overhead and how foundations fund nonprofits. And it just got me into this whole idea of like capacity building. And at the time I didn't know that was organizational development and I didn't understand, but the people who were doing the work that I most admired, they were facilitating basically org change and capacity building conversations.
Can you,
So
not to interrupt you, I just for a dum dum like me, can you just explain what capacity building means? What is it? What does that mean, capacity?
yeah, so it means a lot of things. It's
In
really
this sense, I guess.
large umbrella term. So if you're doing capacity building, it could be like, how do we get more, it could be more efforts for overhead. So how do we get more people working on different things? How do we get more resources coming in? How do we create more efficiencies in our system? So you could have capacity building in your marketing or in your fundraising efforts. But when you talk about it at large, it essentially just means like trying to create be able to do more with what you have or get more in, more resources
Okay,
in
okay,
people or money or other
okay.
things.
Thank you for that. Sorry to interrupt.
It's essentially like what strategic planning kind of they're similar. There's a lot of kind of overlap with these things.
Okay.
And they don't really use that language, I realize, in the corporate world. But anyway, long story long, I
No, keep
just
going.
kept putting myself in situations where I was doing capacity building-esque things. I got really interested in how to get alternative funding into nonprofits. I was working with like high net worth individuals and family foundations to create different types of unrestricted grants to go into nonprofits for capacity building grants. And there's just always needed to be a facilitator. And so I always stepped into that role because I just was like, I'm a theater kid at heart. I like love to be in front of the room, but I like don't really want to memorize lines. I want to like be engaged with the people and trying to have something that has an impact. And so, yeah, I just kept finding myself in that role. But I was also like event planning and project managing and fundraising at the same time. And I finally figured out that it was its own thing. And then I got really excited.
You were like,
Wow.
this is a job.
I
Can
was
I
like,
tell
wait,
you?
can I not plan this whole event and have to worry about the food and the location and then like just deal with how people are going to spend their time, like going through a process or, dialoguing. So yeah, that's how I found it. And once I found it pretty early on in my career and I just sniffed it out and I was like, this is my thing. And at the time, it was not really in the zeitgeist. And so I just kind of kept following that scent. And luckily, the world has caught up. And now it's a little bit more of a term that people just understand. And I'm really happy that I stuck with it, even though people for a long time had no idea what it was.
Can I
Wait,
just?
how does your mom, hold on, Blake, hold on one second. How
You can
does
hold
your
on.
mom explain what you do? This is really important to me.
She like now it's taken so long. So this was like I started figuring it out like 15 years ago. So now she just talks about me being facilitator and
Okay.
she works with teams and leaders and she runs her own business. So she kind of just does the high level. Before she used to be like, I just can't. I don't know
Mhm.
what to do.
But
She'd be
yeah,
like nonprofit stuff, people,
Stuff.
gatherings, conferences, and I was like, oh.
I always think it's funny how our parents, like people who do what we do, how our parents describe it because they have literally no idea.
this would be such a funny, like viral reel or TikTok to make of us asking parents, can you describe what I do for work? Because I mean, I know my mom how she would respond. She would have no clue. And has asked me multiple times to simplify it, and I have, and it doesn't make a difference at all. Like she's still stuck on the old job.
I mean, it
Um,
makes sense. It's like once something gets locked in there, it's really hard to change it up.
well, and it's like there is sort of a broadness to what we do
Yes.
that's hard to explain at
Hmm.
times because it's so context dependent. So it's like it's hard to describe at times. Um, but I have to before I forget, I want to bring this up. There's
Yes.
this
Sorry.
weird there's weird like thing that keeps happening where I'm speaking to a lot of facilitators recently, and I want to say like 3 out of 5 of the people I've been speaking to, and if not more, it's just been happening a lot recently, have been theater kids that turned facilitator. And I
Interesting.
relate to that. I was a theater kid, loved it.
Thing.
Um, there was someone else I was at a conference with who was also speaking there. And he's like, I don't know, I turned into, from a theater kid to this. It just felt natural doing it. There is, and I think there, what it is that we get that early training to overcome that fear of public speaking that people have. And so it feels a lot more comfortable. So you're already like a step past a lot of people who struggle maybe to do this type of thing. And you also understand the value of keeping people entertained or engaged, I'll say, not entertained, engaged. So you understand that there's certain ways to do that, and it's really important if you want somebody to enjoy whatever it is that you're doing in front of them.
Yeah, and like just like you said, like it is part entertainment, like I notice when I'm in front of a crowd, like I ham it up, like it's when I get a little bit
Totally.
funnier. It's when I feel like when I'm really in the flow of facilitating something, I am just like the funniest version of myself,
Yeah.
and like I definitely lean into that. And I think it has to do with intonation and tone and how you explain things. And And just the like enjoyment. I mean, I still think about that sometimes when I'm sure you've experienced this where like people always answer things and they're just staring at me and answering it to me. Like if I'm having a team, a group discussion about their team dynamics, it's like people will still look at me.
Hmm.
I have to like hold their gaze and be in that like intense moment where you hold a lot of power as the facilitator, which is such a fascinating, because you hold all the power so you can give it all back, which is such a
Yeah,
dynamic to be in. But I think as a theater kid, I like the power. I like being looked at like that, right? And there's something that I enjoyed about it as a kid and I enjoy about it as an adult. And there's not that many professions where you get to do that, but you don't have to like, I'm not good enough to be on stage professionally. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
a good thing I'm good at
But
facilitating.
you found your way. There's an intoxication that happens, I think, of having the eyeballs and having the energy coming towards you, and you can be able to bounce that energy back to the audience. And I think about, I'm a big comedy fan, and I listen to a lot of comedians on podcasts or read their books, and a lot of them talk about being in theater as a kid. And a lot of comedic actors or even dramatic actors talk about being in theater as a kid and having the audience in the palm of their hand and how intoxicating that was. And they kind of went chasing that feeling for the rest of their life. And they still love that. And I think there's a little bit of tinge of that with what we do. It's just shifted more towards
Totally.
like, okay, instead of entertaining you, I'm going to help you grow and become better. And that's where the true like validation comes from for us now. It's not about that they left entertained and happy. It's that they left happy and feel like they've grown in some area or that they're a better version of themselves.
Totally. Yes. And I think for me, the other part of it is that I think there's the reason why I love it. It's a blend of the worlds of like, it's the theater part of me. It's also the activist part of me. It's like where I see the theory of diversity and collaboration
Hmm.
happening. And
Mm.
that's why it's just such a great intersection for me to be at because I get to kind of ham it up and be in front of the group, but then also have something happen, right? And I feel like that's
Yeah.
what is different besides just entertainment is like there's a lot of, I mean, I don't want to, entertainment is so important and can be a
Mm.
huge, art is so great for activism, but I love the kind of like moving from the theoretical into the practical and like this is actually what collaboration is instead of just talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that moment where like people do not think they can get over their problems and then they just have a conversation with each other and they figure it out and they're like this it was this easy and you're like kind of I spent like 90 hours making it that easy for you but yes the answers are always in the room.
Hmm.
If it felt easy, that means someone put a lot of
Yeah.
work into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those moments of realization too of working with groups or working with teams and helping them come to a deeper understanding of each other through teaching them like they've been operating in a certain way and they've never asked why, and they you give them this safe space and environment to start asking why are we behaving this way, or why are we getting stuck on these problems, or why do we keep having these interpersonal issues, and they start asking each other why in this safe place, and you just get to watch like the relationship come together and them
Hmm.
build a stronger dynamic. It's always such a cool thing to see. And I relate to what you said about them. You'll ask questions and they look at you to give you the answer. And I remember very specifically one time going, "Why are you looking at me? Tell them. You're talking to them. Tell them."
All the time. I'm always redirecting, like, I'm actually not the one who's on your team here.
I'm not
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I'm just posing the questions. Like, I'll tell you, what to talk about, but the rest is up to you. I love that moment of like, turn to each other.
yeah,
And I think I think it also just shows that there's like such a vulnerability in that moment that people are not used to looking their team members in the eye and talking about their lack of communication or bad habits or whatever. I mean, even if it's a strategic problem, I think there's just like that's why it's helpful to have an outside person and
Totally.
you
yeah,
need someone else to kind of like, it's redirecting that back. And
yeah.
also like giving activities instead of just figure,
Right.
figure it out. There's something about we as humans love structure to get
Yeah.
through.
It's like it's intimacy that we're giving them, and intimacy feels gross if we're not used to it. Like in you know, like we're basically creating activities that so they can become more intimate, but we're not saying that. But it's like looking someone in the eyes and telling them how you feel is so vulnerable and so intimate. It's like, ugh, get away
Yeah,
from
my
me.
clients are not going to buy that, but I'll be like, oh, your
Yeah, no.
KPIs will.
Yeah.
This will help with innovation.
That'd be an interesting pitch. Is that like I bring intimacy to your office?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go off on too much of a soapbox, not a soapbox, a tirade on this, but there's a lot of things that are inside of the business zeitgeist that is just like a guy went over to India and learned about meditation and came back and changed the words of it. You know what I mean? Like there's so like if you take everything down to its bones, it's somebody changing the terminology so it could be palpable inside of corporate America.
Right. I mean, that intimacy, of course, it's like everything with boundaries. Like not everyone needs to be best friends, but like what is required for innovation is a form of intimacy still, right? It's
Totally.
more of a mental,
But
but
can't
also,
say that. You can't say that. You have to be like a different word.
Yeah, dynamics, team dynamics,
Propinquity.
interpersonal relations. Like even the word
Oh
relationship
yeah.
feels dirty,
yeah.
like it
There
feels
we
weird.
go. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
all about like the outcomes. I like barely focus on what we're actually doing and more about where we're trying to head is the
Yeah.
way that it's,
Th-
palpable.
This is actually a good segue, Annie. So, if you are thinking about the world of facilitation right now and like facilitators, what kind of advice would you give to people who, because also I think right now, all leaders, because of how the world is, like being virtual and being hybrid, all the things, like all leaders need to recognize that they have to build facilitation skills, right? Like if you haven't recognized that yet, you need to recognize it. Like you're either a bad facilitator or you're a good facilitator, become a good one. But like, so if you think about the world of facilitation and now that encompasses leaders, like what kind of advice, like what are your insights on how people need to improve those skills?
Yeah, it's been really interesting as we've developed more and more leadership development courses. We're like always tempted to just scratch it and just do full on facilitation. Because if we're doing, teaching people how to be better virtual leaders, it's like, well, you actually just need to learn how to be better a
Yes.
facilitator. Because essentially, every time, the what's really hot right now in leadership is always about like how to be, a steward leader where you're like letting your team do the work and you're not trying to be in the spotlight and you're trying to let others be seen, right? And that's essentially just like what facilitation is really is. So I think for leaders, yeah, like what's my advice? I mean, I think it's just like just acknowledging that that's a thing. I mean, companies right now are not fully investing in this. They're not like fully putting all the dots together. So I think it's like it's going to take a few more years for them to kind of see the overlap and for organizations to see like their L&D programs to really be leaning into this. Because I do agree. I think all leaders need facilitation skills. I don't think they need to be master facilitators. I don't
No.
fully understand how to design things or get into the complex like theories that I think master facilitators have and need. But if you're going to be running any meeting, and if you think that people are enjoying your meetings, then first ask them, see what they actually think.
That's such good advice. First,
Yeah,
ask them,
seriously.
are you enjoying this?
Yeah.
And really, I would just say it's like any kind of retro that you can do. Retro is a retrospective. So at the end of the meeting, the simplest retrospective in the entire world is something called plus delta. The plus is what went well, the delta is what can we change. And really, it's just kind of gathering feedback, which is really what facilitation is feedback loops in lots of different ways. And so I think the most basic thing in my advice is like start getting into those feedback loops about your meetings, what you can do better. Because again, you're trying to solicit information from everybody in the room somehow. Either you
Mhm.
can do that if it's a small number of people, you can get them to verbally say it. If it's a larger number, you're going to want to lean on virtual whiteboarding tools like Miro or Mural. So it's essentially how can you get everyone in the room to interact? And there's some really simple ways to do that. There's some really complex ways to do it. And I would also say look into liberating structures, which is a body of work that is 33 micro facilitation activities that unleash and unlock everyone. So they're free, they're Creative Commons, and they're just some really easy techniques that people can use to go do this thing that we're talking about. Because it's not rocket science, which is what's so cool about it. And it will just like change the game and it will stop you from being like, how do I, let other people shine and what can I do? It's like just get other people to talk, but like do it in a way where it's not the loudest people, the highest paid people, where people aren't
Mhm.
droning on, where there's a point to what's going on. Like there's just a few things that you can do to make sure that people are engaged.
What was it called? Liberation? What?
Liberating structures.
Liberating structures.
Yeah.
Taking
Their
notes.
website is not beautiful, but that's okay. Don't be fooled.
Okay.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We'll put a link on the show notes too.
There was a course recently I had taken about, a lot of it was neuroscience of facilitation.
Oh, nice.
And
I love that that's a course now.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's neuroscience of everything. And what I loved was that the course starts off with like, by the way, there's a lot of neuroscience out there, quote unquote. That's total bullshit, quote unquote.
Yeah, there is a website actually called Neurobullocks, and it's like a UK site that looks at all of the news where people are using neuroscience and debunks it. And I mean, it's not a positive read, but it's an interesting read.
Yeah, there's
Anyway,
the
I love that
neuroscience
they
of
started out
everything.
with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
no,
Because
it was like
it's buzzy.
the
Yeah,
first week was that. Second week was like the ethics of neuroscience. I was like, so how do you question the neuroscience? It was like that's how they started. It was great.
love it.
Um, but a lot of it was focused on really how do we keep people's attention,
Mm,
intonation, making sure that there's diversity of thought in the room being shared and it's not the same couple people because they'll zone out, calling out certain emotions in the room that are being noted, just naming, giving them a name, and not necessarily saying what's happening here, just saying, hey, I'm noticing that the room's quieting down or the energy's going down, and just seeing kind of what happens. There was all of these really interesting things that relates back to our brain just either adapting to a situation or the cognitive biases popping up. It was really, I don't know. I'm sorry you triggered the thought and I wanted to share it, but it was a really interesting little course I took.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's like highlighting. I mean, I think about this all the time, the kind of like socio-emotional things that are happening as a facilitator. People always talk about it like their spidey senses are, happening, or they're like, reading the room is another kind of phrase that comes up a lot. And that's exactly what you're describing, which is just being aware of what other people are experiencing and then doing something in response to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the why we love learning about neuroscience is because it's oversimplifies the process of everything to us and just goes like, this is human. This is why
hmm
this works because it triggers
Totally.
this area of the brain that is part of the reward circuitry. So if you can do this, it's going to be better. And it just simplifies everything. But yes, I mean, basically in the end, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's just, I think it's just giving a name and like an area of our brain that's naming to those exact, like what those feelings are, what intuition is, and all of that.
And it sounds really legitimate when you say the neuroscience of it.
The
Totally.
neuroscience of
Yeah,
facilitation. Like
I
that's how
exactly.
you
almost,
have to say it.
Yeah, it is. You have to.
Yeah.
I almost made a post yesterday 'cause I feel like the neuroscience of is starting to fade, but what I'm seeing now more than ever is the term trauma informed. And
Oh, interesting.
everything is becoming trauma informed.
It's on the hype cycle.
Yeah.
Neuroscience is down here, trauma informs up here.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing some new trauma-informed facilitation classes coming,
Ooh.
which is a great thing to do. I mean, if you're facilitating a lot, good thing to
Yeah.
know.
There's
I have another stance on this that all facilitators, and this again means all leaders, you need to know a little bit about that too, because it goes back to the power of facilitation.
Mhm.
I mean, I did a really big deep dive. I'm not going to get into here about like undue influence if you are a facilitator in that room, and there's some harm you can cause.
Mhm.
And I think that there's some harm I caused for my years of doing it that I didn't even know of, right? Like so when you're thinking about a room, there is a baseline knowledge I think you need to understand about that power that you hold and like how to not accidentally exploit it.
Yeah. How do you think that like showed up for you in
What do you
past?
mean?
Like, how did you find that you weren't wielding your power or being aware of your power?
I mean, I just don't think I really understood that like here this is a really easy example of undue influence is that like if you ask somebody to share something vulnerable about themselves, if it's someone that has power, right? So if they're like telling a like they're saying something about their childhood, there's an undue influence there if a person in power says something that you need to say something more vulnerable, right? And then that can go on and on and on and on. So it's just like that psychology I didn't really realize is that you need to be really aware of the environment and the undue influence that can accidentally happen in a room, right? Like I didn't like that blew my mind when I heard of it because I saw the repercussions of it, like people saying things to their work peers that they had no business saying. But like, and I was like, well, that's their discretion. But it is and it isn't. Like I was in charge of the undue influence that happened. So this could be a whole nother podcast episode, but I just think that we have to understand influence and group dynamics so we make sure we're not putting people in harm's way.
Totally. I mean, I think for me, I think that power is something that I've studied quite a bit and is at the core of what facilitation is all about. And I too, like in my younger years, I thought that like the more emotional we could be, the
Hmm.
more effective we could
Mhm.
be.
And it is, right? It bonds people together if they're sharing vulnerabilities. That assimilates a group. Like groups coming together is not rocket science. Like everyone uses the same playbook to make a group feel like they're a cohesive unit. But what I never asked was, is it right or not to create that emotional experience?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that like vulnerability hangovers create the best ongoing relationship. And so I think that goes back to this like, how are people
Hmm.
going to feel after this workshop
Yes.
week when they're going back in and they cried in front of their colleagues and
Right.
then kind of like, oh, I don't
Oh
feel
God. It
good about
like makes me like thinking about some of the things we used to do in our leadership programs. Like now that I know, I'm like, oh gosh, guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
but like
No,
being very clear that you're entering this type of space, which is like not most work leadership
Yeah.
development. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I think there is a ceiling to the emotions and the vulnerability that should be shared. And there was recent research that Amy Edmondson put out about bringing our authentic selves to work, and she's like, yes, bring your authentic self to work to an extent.
Oh my God, for sure.
And the research is like now finally prove it's kind of like what we all knew.
Hmm.
Um, but the research is finally showing that like there is a threshold there that you cross the line. And even for leaders, one of the interesting things that as I studied playfulness in the workplace, there is this threshold of once they cross, their credibility starts to diminish.
Interesting.
And so they have to be very aware of how much self-deprecating humor they're using, or how they're using it, or how playful they're being. Um, there's I think just at the root of all of this, there's a certain level of emotional intelligence that's required, and situational awareness to go, okay, this is the time for this. Okay, I've pushed too far. I need to backtrack, whatever it may be. They need to be very situationally aware
Yeah,
as they navigate this.
we can't expect everyone to just have that innate ability, right? Some
Like,
people have it more than others. It can be developed, of course, but I think that's something that I definitely realized is maybe we don't have to go all the way there to get the same impact. And maybe
Totally.
that it's
beautifully said. Beautifully said.
No, and there you can have people share certain vulnerabilities that are personal without being intrusive. And I think um, even a almost like a surface level vulnerability that somebody is sharing actually kind of gives you that same effect as somebody sharing something very deep that would end up making someone else uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So like
totally. Oh,
there's a
yeah.
fine line there.
And I'll caveat it sometimes I'll be like, share something that you have already shared with others before.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great too. That's great too.
Not the first time you need to say,
I I always think about how, because it's like how much permission you need to give to people, but like it's hard in that room, right? There's so much pressure on you. And like that is like sharing something that you've already shared before. That is really, really great way. Because I'm
Really
always
good.
like, share something, but like not like be comfortable, but that still doesn't alleviate the same kind of pressure. So I think I love that. That's all.
You reminded me, by the way, before of there was a blurring of lines for me, and I'm thinking about this undue harm thing, and I there was a blurring of lines for me from like facilitating group therapy to
Hmm.
facilitating in a professional at a conference or something, and I thinking back early in my career, I blurred those lines
Of course you did.
several times.
No one taught you not to. No
Right.
one taught us not to.
I remember seeing someone in the front row crying, and instead of ignoring or letting them have their moment. I'm like, I see you're crying. You're getting emotional. Tell us why. And which is what you would do in a group facilitation for therapy, but not necessarily appropriate in a professional setting. But I had no idea. So that's an interesting.
And you also had that clinical experience, right? Like you had that experience of being able, like I would say that there are facilitators out there that they're not a psychologist, right? There's a kind of a blurry line there, but if you are trained to like guide someone through maybe revisiting a traumatic experience, you
Mhm.
shouldn't be doing it.
Totally. Totally.
Right? But it's a funny little, yeah, dilution that happens.
Yeah. Well, and to close the loop on that, by the way, that story of what she ended up sharing, what she was crying about was a happy thing. So it was like
Oh,
that she
okay. So you
felt
were a
so
monster.
good. Yeah, yeah. So it worked out, but I think that wasn't the first and only time I've done something like that in a group. And I would be proud afterwards of going like, wow, I got the group really emotional and vulnerable. And like
Mhm.
that was the goal. I showed them that it's important that they can be
Mhm.
vulnerable. And I'm like, wait, now thinking back, did I just scratch a bunch of scabs and leave them bleeding?
I do like that idea of I definitely feel more kind of on the right path when I'm leading into like the appreciation that people have for each other that can lead to emotion or appreciation that people have for the places they work. I find that people care so much about where they work and what they're
Mhm.
doing, and they can get emotional about that. And that's the realm that I've kind of moved into playing into of like, maybe it's around a dinner and we're not in a conference room, right? Maybe it's like those are the moments you'd be like, what do you appreciate about each other? And I've seen rooms of grown men cry, with each other. And I think that those are the moments that I find to, feel better about now versus like in the workshop talking about traumatic things that happened at work. Like when are those moments more appropriate? And I'm still, you still are constantly like grappling with that.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess going down this vein, I have a question for you of uh, as somebody who does a ton of facilitation and you've clearly grown in, I was going to say grown in the sport, but grown in the field. Um, what are maybe three things that we could give advice to anybody who's listening right now who wants to become a better facilitator? I love learning from mistakes. So is there three maybe mistakes or things that stand out to you that
Ooh,
you
great
see
question.
facilitators make or that maybe you've made in the past that you think we can learn from?
Yeah, I'm sure I've made them all.
The three that stand
I
out.
think the first one that I see the most common is that people don't like to claim the title of facilitator or claim the power that is the role because they feel like they need the certification or the master's degree or especially we see this with women where they're just kind of like, well, I facilitate all these things, but like I'm not a facilitator. And so that like position just gets you in this kind of different, relationship and dynamic with the people that you're working in front of. And so I mean, I went through myself, right? I went through facilitation certifications and I got my master's. And then finally I was like, well, now I'm a facilitator. And I was like, well, did I really have to do all those things? No, for 15 years. And so that's kind of the first is just like trying to own the identity. It's not some like sacred cow. I think when you're leading meetings and you're a leader that's really trying to get other people involved, like you're a facilitator. And I think owning that is like a great first step in and also trying to understand what it is. Because once you start owning the identity, then you have the responsibility of being like, how do I do this well? What does this really look like?
Yeah, well said.
And let's see, number two. Um, this is an interesting one. I think so. Sometimes I get feedback of like what people are liking on my LinkedIn posts. And I'm noticing that one thing that went really viral was like learning how to interrupt people. And this seems to
Mm.
be like one of the like most important things that people feel like they really can't do. And they feel responsible for not hurting people's feelings or not wanting to cut people off because they might be in the middle of sharing something kind of vulnerable, or
Mhm.
it might be somebody who feels more marginalized at work, and we don't want to cut them off because we might feel more comfortable cutting off the kind of like leader who's a little bit older, but we want to let the youngest person really speak. And something that I've learned and had to really shift my perspective about is that, I mean, I don't necessarily even think about it as cutting people off anymore. I think about it as I'm actually the holder of the experience for everybody.
Mhm.
And I'm the holder of that experience even over the experience of an individual. Now, not to their detriment, not to the like intense harm, but my role is to worry about the experience of the whole and the experience of how we're getting these objectives done. And trying to order those priorities is a really important thing that I've had to do over time. I mean, I've had people get triggered in the middle of workshops and I've had to deal with that person, but not totally derail because that's a really important thing. If I totally derail and we spend all this time, we're not necessarily serving that individual, nor are we serving the whole. And so I think a lot about how can we be of service to what we're there to do and trying to see moving people along or, interrupting them as being of service to that instead of being in anti-service of that individual. So that's a second big learning I've had.
Okay, great.
And then a
Brilliant.
third is you don't really need PowerPoint slides to be a facilitator. And just through my career, I mean, now we use Mural for pretty much everything that we do. So I'm not saying that the visual experience isn't important, especially for a virtual experience. But yeah, I think I just used to think it was so important. And I get there's different types of learners and we need to be aware of all of those things, but I think that's about like how you're choosing to spend your time. I think that, again, sometimes it's helpful to have worksheets and see things, but for the most part, I just really use a lot less PowerPoints. And I used to think that that was like somehow totally tied to what I did.
So does that mean the meat and potatoes are in the conversation?
Yeah, so if I'm like in person, I definitely am still really into like tactile, either it's worksheets or it's flip charts and it's stickies. Like it's not about not, and I think instructions are helpful to have on PowerPoint, right? I mean, I think instruction writing is like, thanks to ChatGPT, also now
Ugh.
a different art. And giving instructions is like so critical and learning how to give instructions and end with the last thing you said to be the next thing that people are doing versus like trying to tee everything up. So I think sometimes PowerPoints, slides are helpful for that, and I use Mural for that. Like there's usually instructions but I think activities, yeah, you need a lot less PowerPoint slides than you think you do. I don't know. I just keep coming back to that as like it used to be important and it's not important. I mean, mostly because it's like you barely need any words on those slides anyway, what they found.
Yeah.
Like people can read what you wrote, so
Right.
they're not paying attention to you. And
It's a millennial habit.
yeah, it's just like if it's not on the slide, it like barely exists, and just like you said, like it's like ultimately you're trying to get people to be interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And so the more time they're spent looking at you and the slides, the less time they're talking to each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're facilitating more of like the mind, body, heart connection, and you're getting them moving, you're getting them using their hands, which is so important. Writing things down, thinking critically together. It makes a ton of sense, and I love that. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and my business partner is actually she was a toy designer, toy and game designer. So when you're talking about playfulness, there's like a lot that we bring into play patterns and we don't believe that. We believe facilitation at the work, we need to use playfulness often. We don't have to
Mhm.
necessarily do like a Lego serious play for it to be playful. But there's play patterns and ways that, people engage and so we do bring in a lot of the tactile things to increase that kind of creative capacity.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I totally agree with you. You don't have to necessarily like force the play. Like now you're going to play with Legos. It's more of like, how are you going to problem solve this situation? And we're going to infuse some playfulness into the measure. That's like my whole thing. I love that.
Yes. And like also Lego Stitch Play is also great. I just think that it's like there's a lot of room for
Yeah, yeah,
both.
yeah. Love Legos. Sorry.
Legos are great. No,
Yeah,
I said it first, so
you should play.
wanted
Play
to
with Legos.
clarify.
Yes. Yes. It just goes beyond that. Uh, we're sorry, Legos, okay? We apologize.
Listen, I spend a lot of money on Legos, so y'all can say whatever you want.
You've already you've
Yes.
already shown your loyalty.
Can I tell you both that last week I facilitated a workshop for several leaders in a very large healthcare system, and it went what I would feel poorly.
Mm,
And I'm,
that'll happen.
yeah,
Yeah. Tell me more. Why did it feel that way to you?
it was what you discussed of preparation. And I think the lesson I learned is that I over prepared and I
Mm,
overread the audience.
Mhm.
I let my anxiety, I think, get the best of me of wanting to over explain with research to this particular audience because they are of a certain level of academia and like they
mhm.
are so they love research. I heard that and I ran too far with it. Now, fortunately, I'm doing a series of six of the same workshop with like the rotating leaders within their system. And so this was just one of six. So I've now already altered and fixed what I created. But I got so caught up in wanting to show them that this is research backed, what I'm presenting to them, that I ended up having to cut two out of the three engagement exercises that are the most important part
Mm,
because
interesting.
I ran out of time.
That's such a, I mean, what a easy thing to fall into. I've definitely fallen into that with clients. I mean, I work with so many different industries, and there can be such a desire within me to want to prove myself in front of those people, right? I might be working with a team that's working on like very technical robotics, and I might want to be like, I might be looking like this young woman up here, but even though I don't have a background in robotics, right? But I want to appear somehow like I speak your language.
Yeah, totally.
Security.
I can meet you here. You know, you can trust what I'm saying. I'm not just like spouting stuff at you. And I just totally relate and resonate with that. And I think that's what's been so interesting as I've gone through my career of trying to delineate between consulting and facilitation. And we definitely do a little bit of both, but like I am not there to be the expert in what they do. I'm there to be the expert in the process.
Yeah.
And it's such a fine line. So I just really respect that. And like I think it's always like it's a balance because you do have to show people that you can meet them, you know?
Yeah, totally. And you want them to be interested in the subject. It's a weird little balance.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome.
The best.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us for this.
Thanks for nerding out on one of my favorite topics. It was always a blast to just dive in and see where the rabbit hole takes us.
Awesome. Where can people find you, Annie?
You can find me at theteamtogether.com or womenfacilitating.com.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, thank you very much, Annie, for joining us. Kara, always a pleasure.
Talk to you soon, everybody. Thank you, Annie.
Thanks,
Bye,
Kara.
everyone.
Thanks, Blake.